All right, here's a version of my Juju Sally that has got 2 beads on it, called a 2-bit Sally. So 2 tungsten beads in the 2-bit fashion, and I'm going to show you how to tie this one. This is tied with a Superhair body like the Juju series, and then kind of combined with the 2-bit series. So sort of a combo platter here. This is a fly I like for yellow Sally nymphs in the spring and summer. They tend to get pretty active. If you've ever fished the green up by Pinedale, Wyoming, you have seen the droves of yellow Sallies that hatch up there. And it was a trip up there that sort of spurred me to come up with a better yellow Sally nymph. There wasn't a whole lot of really good ones out there, and now there's a couple. So this is one of them. This is the 2-bit Sally. So I'm going to start here with this is actually an Umpqua JB01 hook. I think this is actually a Tiemco maybe. Gosh, I'm not sure. Anyway, this hook's hard to get anymore. A Daiichi 1150 is pretty darn close. You can see this is a curved shank hook, and it's offset. That offset sort of bugs me because I tie left-handed, and it tilts the shank toward me, so very often I end up kind of tweaking that back straight anyway, but that's what the hook looks like to start with. And what I'm going to do, this is a size 14. I'm going to take 2 gold tungsten beads, and in this case, these are 2mm beads. If you want it to be a little heavier, you can go to 2.4s, which are about 3/32, but sort of undersized beads on this one. I want to keep this fly slender, but I still want to keep it heavy, so that's the 2 undersized tungsten beads. So 2 2mm gold tungsten beads, and they're put on in the conventional manner, nothing fancy there. So then I'm going to take some 8/0 unithread in yellow, and I'm going to start this here just in front of the hook point, really. And I'm going to wrap back down the bend. I've got a little too much junk in my background here. I'm going to wrap back down the bend fairly far there, and then I find it easiest to just tilt that hook and expose that hook bend a little bit more. This will make putting the tail in a little bit easier. And for the tail, I use a very exotic material that is like microfibbits but much thicker, and you can see those are really nicely modeled. And the secret to this is a Wooster paintbrush. So I just cut some of those fibers off. I melted them together and bound them up with some thread, and then I took a marker and barred them up. They're kind of a nice gold color. And the reason I use these instead of microfibbits is they are a little thicker, and they better replicate the tail of the real bug. And I will tell you, they're tough as nails. So I'm going to take 2 of these and even the tips up, and I'm going to measure about a shank length long. I like kind of a long tail on this one. I'm going to tie those in right at the bend, 3 or 4 turns right in front of the other, and kind of sway those out. These are pretty stiff little fibers, so you can manually manipulate them pretty easily. And then I split the tail like a dry fly. So I'm going to take my thread here and I'm going to make a figure 8. So I'm coming from my near side of the hook, under the near tail, around the hook, around the far, over the far tail. And if I do that real slow, you can see that figure 8 there. And then tighten that up, and that'll splay our tails into a nice wide V. Then I'm going to wrap forward over those butt ends. Right up to about where I started, and then I'll nip those butts out. Now I can put my hook back in the vise in the usual manner. I'll kind of tweak those tails as needed, like so. And now for the abdomen, what I'm going to use is 2 strands of yellow Chartreuse Superhair. I'm sorry, 3 strands of yellow Chartreuse Superhair and 1 strand of red. So I've got 3 yellows and 1 red. Get them separated there. You can actually see them. I'm going to square the ends. I'm going to move this light just a bit so I could actually see. There we go. Yeah, that's much better. So I'm going to tie all 4 strands in here along my near side, and I'm going to wrap back over them to just short of the tails. Now, as I said, I tie left-handed, so as I go, back down toward the bend here, my thread stays pretty flat. If you're one of those weird people that is right-handed and ties right-handed, you're probably going to need to manage your thread twist a bit. So you may need to stop along the way to smooth that thread out so that you don't end up with a corrugated underbody. And that's just a matter of spinning your bobbin. I was actually talking about thread management in class last night, and it's not always the same direction. You don't always have to twist the same direction. It depends on which direction it went on the spool, the thread went on the spool. But the easiest answer is if you twist it one way and it twists up more, twist it the other way and make it flat. But what I want to do there is just kind of build a thin tapered underbody. Let's make sure our focus is still there. Yeah, we're still good. So now I'm going to take all 4 strands here, and I'm going to come forward and over the hook, and I want to kind of rock these back and forth. I didn't get a great fold there. There we go. Kind of rock these back and forth. And on this curved hook, very often, got a weird fold in there. I'm going to come back. I'm a little loose back here is what's causing my issue. There we go. Get that anchor down, and then again, I just want to smooth that, keep that underbody smooth. Much more like it. So as I come around, it doesn't matter which where that red strand lines up. It'll only show up if it's out of line on the very first turn, and then everything from there should be nice and evenly spaced. So I'm going to wrap these all four strands forward at the same time. And one of the tricks to doing this is I try to hold it very close to the hook. You can see my fingers are right up close to the hook. Hold it very close to the hook. And just try to keep everything as flat as you can. You don't want any twist in there. You don't want much overlap. Occasionally you'll get some. This camera usually shows it. There's, I can't see it with my eyeball, but right there, there's a little tiny bit of overlap. Not a huge thing. You can't see well enough to tell that's there. Well, I don't know if you can. I can't. But I'll cut those butt ends off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up over the front edge of this abdomen. And at this point I'm going to tie in a piece of copper holographic tinsel in medium. And I want to tie this in on top of the front edge of the abdomen. And I want to make sure it's squared up, right straight on the hook, like so. Like that. And then for the legs and wing case, I'm going to take some yellow or shrimp colored fluorofiber. Yellow is much harder to find these days. They do make it, but they haven't delivered any for quite some time. Shrimp is just a kind of a creamy tan color, and that'll work fine for this too. This is not really so much the wing case as it is the legs. But what I've got here is a dozen strands. I counted them out, and you should too. And what I want to do here is tie this in behind that second bead, but I want long tag ends out here out the front, an inch or so long. It's just going to make that easier to manage. Then I'm going to wrap backwards up to the base of that tinsel so that I've got the tinsel and the fluorofiber tied in at the same point. And I'm going to come forward again. And at this point, I'm going to divide these legs. These remaining butt ends are going to become our legs. So I know I've got 12, so I want 6 on each side. So I'm going to take 6 here on my near side, and I'm going to pull them back and wrap over them with just a couple turns there. And I'll pull the other half back on the far side and wrap over it. And what I'm trying to do here, let me get them positioned just right so they're pretty, is just split those like you would pheasant tails, the legs on a pheasant tail. And you can see I've kind of built a thread thorax as I did that. So that's what we've got for right now. Now I'm going to slide that back bead back, and I'm going to jump my thread forward between the two of them. And at this point I like to make a few wraps of thread. And what this is going to do is kind of preserve our space between the beads. You can see that little neck between those two beads. So I'm going to build that up a bit so that my fluorofiber is not pinched down when I fold it forward. And I'm going to fold this forward, a little fluff on there. See that little fluff? Get rid of that. I'm going to pull this forward between the two beads and tie it off right at the back edge of the front bead. Get a couple turns on there. So that's just over the top of the beads. Then I'm going to divide these butt ends again, just 6 to a side. And I'll pull half back on the far side, catch those with a couple turns, and half back on my near side. And if you jam those kind of right up against the front edge of that bead, that'll help to splay those legs out a bit. You want them widespread. Obviously, they're going to end up much shorter on the finished bug, but you want the spread there. And then I'll pull my flash forward, and again, I want to keep that centered. And I'll anchor that at the back edge of the bead. Right over the top, make sure everything's straight. Now I'm going to fold that flash back one more time, make a few wraps to anchor it before I whip finish. Nice clean little whip finish in there. Trim that thread out, and I'll pick that flash up and I'm just going to nick the edge of it. Or I'll just cut all the way through it. So now I'm going to leave these legs long. I'm going to shorten them just a bit, but just so I can kind of make this process a little easier for you to see. But I'm going to leave those legs long for the moment. And what that'll do is allow me something to hang on to while I'm applying the resin. So I'm going to take my needle here, and I've got some medium Solarez resin here. I'm going to get a nice healthy drop. This is a bigger fly, so I've got a nice little gob of it. And what I want to do is sweep all these legs down, and you want to try to get a hold of all of them. Make sure you got all of them. And I'm going to put this resin from the back edge of the front bead up over the top of the wing case, all the way down to the base of the tail, then I'll sweep forward again. And then I try to work it down the sides of the thorax particularly a bit more. And this is why leaving those legs long is important here. If you've cut them short, they're hard to manage, and you'll invariably end up with the resin all over those legs. We just want to smooth that out nice and neat and smooth. Now before we cook this, I want to kind of reposition those legs. That resin will kind of bleed down into where those legs are attached. So we want to have the legs in position before we cook everything. It looks like I've got one strand hung up on the hook point there. There we go. Just make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be. And then I'll come in with my lamp, and I want to go from a distance away and start to cook that and kind of blink on and off. Rotate the fly a bit. Until that's cured up. Now what I'll do is I'm going to grab the legs on either side. Still got this one hidden where he's supposed to be. Get back over there. And I'll kind of spread these out. So this is what we're looking at from the top. And I come in and I'll pull them tight, and I'll cut at an angle so that I've got sort of longer legs at the back and shorter legs at the front. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the far side. And I'll be honest with you here, I very rarely get these both anywhere near equal. So I usually end up coming back in and sort of squaring them up a little bit. I want those legs about the same length on both sides. About like so. You can see our little legs sticking out the sides. We've got a really nice little yellow Sally nymph, or even just a very small golden stone. I think it gets eaten for that a lot of the time too. There's a lot of different species of golden stone, and yellow Sally is the one that we probably recognize the most, but there's a lot of smaller versions out there, and I think this crosses over for them as well. But that is the Juju Sally. Not a hard fly. Kind of combining the Juju series and the 2-bit series. Not a terribly hard fly, but looks awfully like a bug, doesn't it? There you go. That's my little prize for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. I'm Charlie Craven from Charlie's Fly Box. We are a fly shop. So, if you need any Superhair or, I don't know, maybe some holographic tinsel, maybe you just go onto charliesflybox.com and say, hey, fellas, you got any of that? We say, of course we do. We'll get you taken care of. Anyway, Thanks for watching. That's all from me for today. You guys have a good one. Take care.